Games have the capacity to surprise their audiences in a multitude of different ways, whether because of how much better than expected they turn out to be, the nature of the content that they deliver, the standards that they end up setting for the entire industry at large, or any number of other reasons. There's been no shortage of such examples over the years, and here, we're going to talk about 15 in particular.
I didn't remember much, but I knew my thoughts and ideas could manifest as reality in this dark place.
Silent Hill 2 Remake. Bloober Team's remake of Silent Hill 2 was on the receiving end of plenty of skepticism, which, given the developer's spotty track record up to that point, wasn't hard to understand. It's fair to say then that the game turned out to be far, far better than the overwhelming majority of us anticipated. Bloober Team and Konami's Silent Hill 2 remake has been compared to the likes of fellow horror remakes in Resident Evil 2 and Dead Space, and yes, it is that good. Demon's Souls. Back in 2009, when From Software was a niche company with not much of a following, not much was expected from the studio's PS3 exclusive Demon's Souls, which was decidedly a mid-budget game that, at least back then, was meant to target a very specific audience. No one could have expected that it would go on to create an entire subgenre that now dominates the action games and RPG scenes, much less be as good as it was. Metal Gear Solid 2: Sons of Liberty.
It's been a while, brother.
Who are you?
You know who I am.
Liquid?
Metal Gear Solid 2 might be one of the finest cases of deliberately using misleading marketing to enhance a gaming experience. Audiences were collectively blindsided by the game's pivot to Raiden, who took over the role of main protagonist from Solid Snake to everyone's complete surprise. That complete upending of what the game was built up as, combined with how technologically ahead of its time it was, turned Metal Gear Solid 2 into a colossal surprise for many. Cuphead. Cuphead arrived at a time where the indie gaming scene had more than proven its worth, so its incredible level of quality wasn't necessarily surprising. What was surprising was just how unique its vision was, and how effectively it brought that vision to life. Spectacular art style and animations perfectly mimicking the look of 1930s cartoons had never been seen in games like this before, and seeing it implemented so perfectly was a pleasant shock, to say the least. Alien Isolation. A survival horror game based on Alien, coming from a studio best known for strategy games, is an unexpected thing in and of itself, which by extension also made Alien Isolation's excellence a surprise for many as well. In particular, what caught players off guard the most was the Xenomorph and its incredible AI. The terrifying extraterrestrial monstrosity was billed as a constant looming threat for the entirety of the experience, and not only did it end up living to expectations, it went on to set a new standard for stalker enemies in horror games. Hellblade: Senua's Sacrifice. Ninja Theory is obviously a premium first-party studio now, but when Hellblade: Senua's Sacrifice launched back in 2017, it was coming from an indie studio with a small team and a fairly small budget. That the game ended up being as technically impressive as it turned out to be was a testament to Ninja Theory's incredible effort, but even more notable was the game's story tackling the subject matter of mental health with as much sensitivity and nuance as it did. Shadow of the Colossus. Even back in 2005, coming from the team that made Ico, Shadow of the Colossus being as good as it wasn't necessarily a surprise, but on paper, a game like that shouldn't work. It's a desolate open world that doesn't give players much to do by design, and other than the boss fights, there's no combat whatsoever. And even the boss fights are more traversal puzzles and challenges than combat encounters. It was a bold and unique vision, but boy did they pull it off. Red Dead Redemption 2.
Ain't been this far east in many a year. Dutch seems a little better. His eyes are sparkling once more, and I can see he's thinking a little clearer. I think we all feel a little happier, in spite of Blackwater and that whole mess.
Let's be clear, no one is ever going to be surprised that a game by Rockstar turns out to be good. So no, Red Dead Redemption 2 going down as one of the best games ever made may probably have been one of the least surprising things ever. What was unexpected, however, was the extreme emphasis that the game placed on realism and diegetic authenticity. Rockstar's open worlds have obviously always been known for their extreme attention to detail, but never until Red Dead 2 had we seen this level of realism in the studio's games. And hell, even games coming out now, 6 years later, can't do what it did back in 2018. Portal. Every time Valve makes something, you sit up and take notice, but when Portal launched back in the day, very few expected it to be what it turned out to be. Did we think it would be good? Well, yeah, it was Valve, for goodness sake. But did we expect that this small experimental puzzle game would legitimately be one of Valve's best ever games, going on to spawn the even better Portal 2? Absolutely not.
Please note that we have added a consequence for failure. Any contact with the chamber floor will result in an unsatisfactory mark on your official testing record, followed by death. Good luck.
The Stanley Parable. First-person walking sims are not uncommon by any means, but if that's what you go into the Stanley Parable expecting, as many did when it first came out, you're going to be in for a wild ride, to put it mildly. The extremely self-referential and meta-textual nature of the game's narrative and even its very design caught many off guard, especially because of the extent to understand its audience's psychology, not to mention the consistently high level of quality it exhibited with its hilarious, ingenious writing. Death Stranding. Hideo Kojima and his team love to take a sudden left turn when you least expect it, but never have they turned as hard and fast as they did with Death Stranding, which might be one of the most bizarre gameplay concepts for a AAA game ever. The extreme focus it placed on open-world traversal, its unusual approach to combat, the way it roped asynchronous multiplayer into its core design, all of it was highly unconventional, to say the very least. Amnesia: The Dark Descent. Frictional Games' classic 2010 title is widely regarded as one of the greatest horror games ever made, but that doesn't quite capture how much it took the industry by storm. For starters, it wouldn't be an exaggeration to say that you can trade the massive popularity of first-person horror experiences back to Amnesia: The Dark Descent's breakout success. A lot of the streaming and Let's Play culture of the time was also set in large part by the game. Alan Wake 2. Remedy Entertainment loves doing weird stuff with its games, to say the least, but they really let themselves loose with Alan Wake 2. The horror game was the studio's best ever attempt at blending live action with gameplay, and there's no better of an example of that throughout the entire game than the iconic Herald of Darkness and the entire section featuring it. Very rarely do you see big budget AAA games attempting something like that, and almost never do you see anything this well done.
Wake. I've been tricked. Scratch Room. I tried to fix the story, but has it now. It's the key to escape.
What do you mean?
Baldur's Gate 3. Baldur's Gate 3 from Larian was always very likely to be good, but very few people thought it would be this good. That Baldur's Gate 3 would go on to be instantly recognized as flat out one of the greatest games ever made was a huge shock to almost everyone. Pretty much no one would have expected that it would be widely lauded as the year's best game in a year as historically packed as 2023. The Last of Us Part 2. The Last of Us Part 2 sparked a fair bit of controversy with its surprises, to put it mildly, but you can count us in the group that loved every bit of it. Joel's death and his killer Abby being the playable protagonist for about half of the game would have been a huge shock no matter what.
We're gonna have to run! There's too many of them! I'll cover you! Get going! Oh, this way! Through here!
But much like Metal Gear Solid 2, the deliberately misleading nature of the pre-launch marketing only served to make that surprise land with even more impact. Hey, did you know that we at GamingBolt upload new videos every day? Stick around, drop a like, subscribe, and hit that bell. And let us know what kind of content you'd like to see in the future with a comment below.